Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Trends channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Charlie had never imagined he would return to Nice under such dark and stormy circumstances. The sparkling French Riviera, once a place of relaxation and a distant dream of luxury, now carried with it an undertone of bitterness, suspicion, and anger. He walked the cobbled streets with his fists clenched and his jaw tight, every sound of laughter from tourists and the clink of glasses at the nearby cafes feeling like an insult to the turmoil boiling inside him. He wasn't here to soak in the sun or admire the Mediterranean Sea. He wasn't here for art, culture, or the smell of fresh baguettes drifting from boulangeries. No, Charlie had come with one purpose, and one purpose only: to confront Cain, to stand face to face with the man he had once trusted as a father, and accuse him of being the true hand behind Colin's shocking and untimely death. The rumors had reached him back in Genoa City like whispers carried on a bitter wind. Colin Atkinson was dead, and the official story was vague, too vague. There were mentions of betrayal, double crossings, debts unpaid, and dangerous liaisons that went south, but none of it seemed to line up. Everyone in Genoa City who had known Colin was either relieved, suspicious, or silently gloating. Charlie, however, felt the weight of it in a different way. Colin was Cain's father, his grandfather by extension, and though he had caused immeasurable chaos and pain, his death was a dark punctuation mark in a family saga already riddled with betrayal. But what unsettled Charlie most was the gnawing suspicion that Cain wasn't just another grieving son. No, Cain's absence, his silence, his sudden trip abroad, all of it reeked of something darker. It gnawed at Charlie's gut until he could no longer ignore it. The night he booked his flight to Nice, he couldn't even sleep. Memories of his father flooded back. Cain's attempts at being the noble man, his struggles with truth and lies, his entanglements with Colin's schemes. Cain always said he wanted to break free from Colin's shadow, but Charlie knew enough about family to understand how dangerous shadows could be. They lingered, they grew, and sometimes they swallowed you whole. By the time Charlie boarded that plane, he had already rehearsed what he would say, how he would demand answers, and how he would look into Cain's eyes and search for even the faintest crack in his facade. He wasn't going to let Cain brush him off with excuses or half-truths this time. When he finally tracked Cain down, it was in a quiet corner of a seaside restaurant, the kind of place where the tables were covered in crisp white cloths and bottles of expensive wine stood like trophies on polished shelves. Cain was seated at a small table outside, facing the glittering expanse of the sea, his posture calm, almost too calm. The sight infuriated Charlie even more. How could Cain sit here, enjoying the view, while back home the questions surrounding Colin's death ate away at their family's already fragile reputation? How could he sip his drink while Lily, Maddie, and the rest of them were left in the dark? Charlie didn't wait for pleasantries. He marched right up to the table, his voice sharp enough to draw the attention of a few curious onlookers. "You did it, didn't you?" he snapped, his words like venom. "You killed him. You killed Colin." Cain looked up slowly, his expression betraying nothing at first. There was no shock, no outrage, no immediate denial. Just a heavy silence that seemed to stretch on far too long. The only sounds were the waves crashing against the rocks below, and the clinking of silverware from nearby diners. Charlie's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of his accusation hanging in the air like smoke. Finally, Cain spoke, his tone low measured, almost as though he had been preparing for this moment. "Charlie," he said softly, "you don't know what you're talking about." But Charlie wasn't convinced. His voice rose, cracking under the pressure of weeks of pent-up anger. "Don't play innocent with me, Dad. You disappeared right when everything went down. Colin's dead, and everyone's scrambling for answers. Do you expect me to believe you had nothing to do with it?" His fists tightened as his eyes burned with rage. "I came all this way because I can't sit at home and watch you hide anymore. Tell me the truth. Did you kill him?" Cain's eyes flickered, just for a moment, and that was enough for Charlie. That flicker wasn't grief, wasn't innocence. It was something else, something darker. And Charlie felt a rush of certainty. His instincts screamed that he was right, that Cain had blood on his hands, and that this entire trip to Nice would be the beginning of uncovering the truth. The gentle lapping of the Mediterranean against the sun-warmed stone of the promenade was a sound so foreign. so detached from the grim reality that had become his life, that for a moment, Charlie simply stood there, paralyzed by the dissonance. Nice was a postcard come to life, a vibrant explosion of color and light where the air smelled of salt and blooming jacaranda, a stark, almost offensive contrast to the perpetual, polished gloom of Genoa City. He had traveled thousands of miles, propelled by a grief so profound it had become a physical presence, a constant, heavy companion in his chest. The flight was a blur of sleepless hours and tepid airplane coffee, his mind replaying the same, searing image on a loop. Colin, his father in every way that truly mattered, laughing one moment, and then gone the next, his life extinguished in an act of brutal violence. The official reports were a maze of obfuscation and dead ends. The Genoa City Police Department seemingly content to let the case of a reformed, yet still controversial, figure grow cold. But Charlie couldn't. He wouldn't. The justice system had failed, but a son's love, twisted and sharpened by loss, would not. And every fractured piece of evidence, every whispered rumor from the city's underworld, and every gut-wrenching instinct he possessed, pointed inexorably across the ocean, to this very city of pastel-colored villas and to one man, Cain. Finding him hadn't been as difficult as he'd anticipated. A man like Cain, with his particular blend of charm and menace, left a distinct wake, even in a foreign port. A few discreet and not so discreet inquiries in the right bars, a significant bribe to a hotel concierge who knew the value of silence until a higher price was offered, and Charlie had his location. He was here, in this very cafe, nestled under a striped awning, looking for all the world like a man without a care, without the blood of a good man on his hands. The sight of him, sipping an espresso, his posture relaxed, ignited a fresh wave of fury so potent Charlie could taste it, metallic and hot, at the back of his throat. This wasn't the composed, strategic confrontation he had vaguely imagined on the flight over. This was something raw, primal, and unstoppable. His feet carried him forward, each step on the cobblestones a drumbeat toward a point of no return, the cheerful chatter of tourists and the clinking of glasses fading into a dull, roaring silence in his ears. He stopped at the table, his shadow falling over Cain's newspaper. The man looked up, and for a fraction of a second, there was nothing in his eyes but mild, polite inquiry, the look one gives a stranger. Then recognition dawned, and a different, more complex emotion flickered within his gaze. Surprise certainly, but something else, something guarded and calculating, quickly masked by a veneer of cordiality. "Charlie," Cain said, his voice a study in controlled confusion. "What on earth are you doing in Nice? This is an unexpected pleasure." The pause before the last word was deliberate, a tiny pocket of space where the unspoken tension gathered. The pleasantry, the feigned ignorance, was the final spark. All of Charlie's meticulously planned accusations, the logical buildup of circumstantial evidence he had compiled, evaporated in the white-hot heat of his anger. "Don't," Charlie snarled, his voice low and trembling, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Don't you dare sit there and pretend this is a social call. You know why I'm here." He leaned forward, planting his palms on the small, wrought-iron table, causing the espresso cup to rattle in its saucer. The civilized setting of the cafe, with its crisp white tablecloths and delicate pastries, felt like a grotesque stage for the ugliness about to unfold. "I'm here for Colin. I'm here because of you." Cain's expression shifted from cordial confusion to a weary, almost patronizing patience. He leaned back in his chair, a deliberate gesture of nonchalance that was itself a provocation. "Charlie, I heard about Colin. It was a tragedy. A terrible, senseless act. I offered my condolences to the family. But whatever you're implying, you are gravely mistaken. Why would I have anything to do with that?" He spread his hands, the picture of innocence, but his eyes, those cool, assessing eyes, never left Charlie's face. "Because he was a threat to you." Charlie's voice rose, drawing a few curious glances from nearby tables. He didn't care. Let them stare. Let the whole world hear. He knew things about you, about your past, about all the dirty deals and the lies you've woven around yourself and my mother. He was trying to protect her, to protect all of us, from whatever scheme you were cooking up next. He was getting too close to the truth, and you couldn't have that, could you? You couldn't have a man of actual integrity exposing you for the fraud and the snake that you are. The words tumbled out, a torrent of long-suppressed suspicion and grief. He told me he was close to something big, something that would finally bring you down. And then a week later he's dead. That's not a coincidence. That's a consequence. Your consequence. Kane sighed. A long, theatrical exhalation meant to convey the burden of dealing with an irrational child. Charlie, listen to yourself. You're distraught. You're not thinking clearly. Grief can make us imagine all sorts of things, see connections that simply aren't there. Colin made a lot of enemies over the years, in his old life. You know that better than anyone. To pin his murder on me, based on some paranoid fantasy, is not only insulting, it's dangerously delusional. He took a slow sip of his espresso, his hand steady, a stark contrast to Charlie's visibly trembling frame. Do you have any proof? Any evidence at all that would substantiate this outrageous claim? Or is this just the grief-stricken rant of a boy looking for someone to blame? The question, so calmly delivered, was a direct hit. Proof was the chink in his armor, the gaping hole in his case that Charlie had tried to fill with sheer certainty. He had no murder weapon with Kane's fingerprints, no eyewitness placing him at the scene, no damning confession caught on tape. What he had was a timeline that fit, a motive that was glaringly obvious to anyone who knew the players involved, and the unshakable conviction that resonated in his very soul. I don't need a signed confession to know the truth, Charlie shot back, his voice cracking with emotion. I see it in your eyes. I see the guilt you're trying to hide behind that cool, collected facade. You think you're so clever, that you've covered all your tracks. But you forgot one thing. You forgot about me. You forgot that Colin was my father, and that a son knows. I know it was you. Kane's patience seemed to wear thin, the mask of civility slipping to reveal a glint of steel beneath. That's enough, Charlie, he said, his voice dropping, losing its pleasant tone and gaining an edge of warning. You've made a long trip for nothing. You're accusing me of murder based on a feeling. A feeling. Do you have any idea how libelous that is? How much trouble you could be in for throwing around accusations like that? I suggest you take some time, calm down, and really think about what you're saying before you do irreparable damage. To yourself, and to your family. Don't you dare talk about my family, Charlie roared, now completely oblivious to the audience they had attracted. You have no right. You infiltrated our lives, you manipulated my mother, and you destroyed the one man who was a real father to me. You took him from me. Do you understand that? You took him, and I will never, ever stop until I prove it. I will dedicate my life to this. I will tear apart every one of your business deals. I will follow you to the ends of the earth. I will find the proof. This isn't over. This is just the beginning. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving, the world narrowed down to the man sitting before him. The man he believed with every fiber of his being was his father's killer. For a long moment, Kane simply stared at him, his expression unreadable. The sounds of the city seemed to rush back in. The distant cry of gulls, the hum of a scooter, the laughter of a child. The normalcy of it all was jarring. Finally, Kane spoke, his voice low and devoid of its earlier pretense, each word measured and cold. Be very careful, Charlie. You're playing a very dangerous game, one you don't understand. You're chasing shadows, and in the dark, it's easy to get hurt. You think this is about justice? This is about a boy stumbling into a war he can't possibly win. Go home. Mourn your father. Let this go. For your own sake. The threat was not explicit, but it hung in the air between them, more palpable and chilling than any shouted accusation. It was the sound of a door closing, a line being drawn, and the confirmation, in Charlie's mind, that he was on the right, terrifying path. Without another word, Kane placed a few euros on the table, stood up, and walked away, melting into the bustling crowd on the Promenade d'Anglais, leaving Charlie standing alone, shaking with rage and the cold, hard certainty that his life had just been irrevocably changed. The battle lines had been drawn not in a corporate boardroom or a dark alley, but at a sun-drenched café in the south of France, and Charlie knew, with a dread that settled deep in his bones, that the consequences of this confrontation would ripple back to Genoa City, threatening to pull everyone and everything he had left into the devastating undertow. Kane pushed his chair back slowly, the scrape of wood against the tiled floor making the few diners who were still watching flinch slightly. He didn't stand right away. Instead, he leaned forward, folding his hands on the table as though he were about to begin a delicate negotiation. His eyes, steady and unblinking, locked on Charlie's with a kind of weary patience. "You think you know everything, son," he said, his voice calm but edged with something dangerous. "But you're walking into something you don't understand. Colin's death is not as simple as you want to believe." Charlie's breath hitched, his heart pounding faster now. "Don't patronize me. I've lived with your lies long enough to recognize them. You've always said you wanted to get away from Colin, that you didn't want to be like him. But what if you couldn't escape it? What if, in the end, you became the very man you hated?" His words came out like fire, fueled by years of resentment. Years of being dragged into the chaos that Kane's past had left in its wake. "I know you, Dad. You tell yourself you did it to protect us, to protect Lily, to protect me and Maddie. But that doesn't erase what you've done. If you killed him, you're no better than he was." That struck Kane hard. His lips tightened, and for a brief second, the calm veneer cracked. He stood up then, towering over Charlie, his voice lower but trembling with controlled fury. "Don't you dare compare me to him. Don't you dare." The wind coming off the sea gusted through the terrace, sending napkins fluttering and glasses rattling. The waiters tried to pretend they weren't eavesdropping, but the tension between father and son was impossible to ignore. Charlie didn't back down. His stance widened, his shoulders squared, as though he were bracing for battle. "You think I don't remember the times he conned everyone?" Charlie pressed. "The money he stole, the chaos he left behind? Every time he came back into our lives, he left nothing but destruction. And every time you forgave him, or tried to clean up his mess. I used to think it was loyalty. But maybe it was something else. Maybe you were just waiting for your chance to take him out." Kane's jaw tightened again, but this time his voice faltered. "You think I'd kill my own father? You think I'd carry that kind of blood on my hands?" He leaned closer, his eyes sharp as daggers. "If you believe that, Charlie, then you don't know me at all." Charlie felt his throat close, but he forced the words out anyway. "I don't know you anymore." The silence between them was deafening. It stretched until Kane finally exhaled and turned away, gripping the railing that overlooked the water. His shoulders slumped as if the weight of years had just dropped on him at once. "Colin destroyed everything he touched," Kane said finally, his voice hoarse. "I spent my whole life trying to separate myself from him. Every choice I made, every step I took, I thought I was breaking free. But no matter what I did, people still saw me as his son. And maybe they were right." Charlie swallowed hard. He wanted to scream, to demand a clear yes or no, but Kane's words felt like smoke. Hard to grasp, impossible to hold on to. He stepped closer, his voice trembling now not with anger but with desperation. "Then tell me what really happened. If you didn't kill him, then who did? Why all the secrecy? Why run here instead of facing us?" Kane turned then, his face carved with anguish. "Because I know who did it," he admitted quietly, his eyes darting around as though every shadow held ears. "And if I told you, if I dragged you into this, you'd be in danger too. Colin wasn't killed over petty grudges or debts. He was caught up in something much bigger, something that doesn't end with him." Charlie froze, his anger colliding with confusion. "What are you talking about?" Kane shook his head, his lips pressed tightly together. "I can't. Not here. Not now." He glanced at the other tables, noticing the way a man in a dark suit had been staring a second too long before looking away. "You have no idea how far this reaches, Charlie. If you want to protect yourself, you need to walk away." But Charlie wasn't about to walk away. His eyes blazed as he grabbed Kane's arm. "No. You don't get to shut me out anymore. You've hidden enough, lied enough. If you really care about protecting me, then stop treating me like a child and tell me the truth." His grip tightened. "Did you kill Colin, or are you covering for someone else?" Kane's expression shifted, just slightly, but it was enough. It wasn't the look of a man hiding his own crime. It was the look of a man holding someone else's secret. Charlie saw it, and his stomach twisted. The realization that his father might be protecting another person, someone dangerous, was somehow worse than the idea of Kane being guilty himself. And in that moment, Kane whispered just loud enough for Charlie to hear, "You're asking the wrong questions."